In this video, I'm going to be breaking down every LinkedIn automation that you need to grow on LinkedIn and, more importantly, generate leads and make sales for your product or your service. The automations that I'll be teaching in this video are all proven, they're all battle-tested winners that are working wonders this year that more than 2,000 B2B businesses are actively using to generate leads without having to hire and train a VA, spend thousands on an expensive agency, being viewed as spam or getting shut down by LinkedIn, and most importantly, without having to spend dozens of hours doing manual tasks that could be spent doing high leverage things. Now, if you're not able to watch this all the way through right now, or if this is just a bad time, just do yourself a favor and save this video for later, because you will want to make sure you watch this all the way through and set up the same automations that I am doing right now. Now, LinkedIn automation has helped my agency book in meetings with names like Morgan Stanley, Calendly, Reddit, PwC, Deutsche Bank, IronBrew, Bar, PandaDoc, and Headspace and Stripe. And we did all of this because we were leveraging LinkedIn automation across 200 plus accounts with a couple other really clever techniques, which I'm going to show you in this video. Now, if you're wondering why would anyone want to automate things on LinkedIn, because everything could be done manually, and in some regards, someone might say that manual is better because you're able to create more personalized messaging, then I want you to be very mindful of these few facts. Firstly, when you're automating things on LinkedIn, you save yourself a lot of time. There's no need, in my opinion, to subject yourself to manually waking up and having it as a calendar block to wake up and click on hundreds of profiles, click connect, and almost waste hours of your time, especially when your competition is using automated flows and then using the time they've saved to focus on other business activities like sales or product or marketing. The other reason I'd say to consider LinkedIn automation is to remove errors. And this is because I've heard this argument before that, hey, why don't I just hire a VA and they'll do it for me? And yes, VA hour per rates could be pretty low, and let's say it's $3 per hour, and maybe somehow it's able to compete with a $50 or $100 subscription for a LinkedIn automation tool. I would argue that it's very likely that that model will break, because it's likely that the VA won't always do work to the exact same quality every single time. It's likely the VA will take time off, and it's likely that you'll need to train the VA. So in regards to this, you're ultimately using a sub or inferior solution that's going to actually cost you more energy and more time in the long run. I've also found that without LinkedIn automation, I can't actually measure what works. And think about this for a second. Imagine you had 3 verticals you were testing. And in this example, let's say it was HVAC, lawyers, and agencies, and you say, I'm going to send out 100 connection requests to each of those verticals and then measure which one has a higher acceptance rate, which one has a higher reply rate, which one has a higher booking rate. If this was done all manually, it would be very hard to distinguish which meetings, which replies came from which list, because you would ultimately need to look at that reply, look at that conversation, and match it back to that individual list. So you have 3 spreadsheets, you're tracking everything. It's very time consuming. Alternatively, we had this one client, for example, where we were able to automate campaigns into literally exact verticals. So we had a vertical for HVAC, a vertical for healthcare. And so, for example, we saw a really bad acceptance rate in the HVAC niche at 5%. And so we said, this is really not great, and maybe this is better in other niches. So we launched another campaign into the healthcare, and we almost doubled our connection acceptance rate. It's really easy to see this when you have dashboards and automation tools that are doing this for you. But when you're doing this manually, it's really hard to measure this acceptance rate, because you need someone to manually check on all the data, which again costs you more time. The next thing I love is when you're automating things, you are able to essentially add connections whilst you sleep. And I absolutely love the fact that I can grow my network whilst I'm sleeping. It's completely passive, and the marginal cost to the ROI is pretty wild. I could create a lead list of 2,500 leads, set it up today, and then be done with it and not really have to check back on that automation for the next 1 to 3 months, because it is literally running passively for me. And especially true if you're not ready to go to market for whatever reason. Say you're thinking about doing automation, or you want to build an audience in advance of selling a product. This is a great way to do it too, because you don't need to pitch. You can just have a connection accepted by a ICP, and then when you're ready to sell, you can then message them, at which point they're already part of your network. They already know who you are. It's just a much, much warmer and easier conversation. And ultimately, this is a no-brainer for any serious business owner who wants to have a network growing of qualified people, because it literally only costs $50 to $100 per month. And then finally, this scales with your team and account. If you're automating things, you're able to add in more accounts to that outreach, so you can scale your volume. You can go from 1 account to 2 accounts to 10 accounts, and you can just keep increasing your outreach volume. Now, there are a lot of LinkedIn automation tools out there. I'm not going to mess about and lie to you and say you have to use this one or that one, but I will tell you across the market what's going on with LinkedIn automation tools. my personal experience, having done this for literally 6, 7+ years, and the specific outcomes and concerns you need to be aware of. So I've seen nearly every automation method, every tool come into market. I could list them all right now. It's the most sophisticated it's ever been, but some mistakes are still being made by some tools, and I think you need to be aware of them because it can cause you big issues. The first is proxies and locations. So whenever you log into LinkedIn, LinkedIn knows where you're logging in from. This is a help article showing how you get a notification when you access LinkedIn from a new location. So if you've ever had someone log into your account and they're in a different location, you get this like 2FA message saying, are you sure this person's logging in from location? That is what's happening. And so it's not a huge issue when that person is legitimately using that account for whatever reason, because they ask for a 2FA from your phone and email, and generally it's okay. And if that account stays logged in, it's not a huge issue. But I have found that there are certain tools that re-log into your account every single day. Like that's just their flow. Or when they re-log into their account, they don't use the same location. They don't use the same proxy or VPN. And that causes the, hey, you're in this new location to appear multiple times, which can cause an issue for your account. And this is especially true for the cheaper LinkedIn tools, because you literally have not given them enough money for them to go out and buy a residential static proxy, which is basically a address online which says you live at this place or you're logging in from this place, and it's not going to move in location and it's going to stay fixed. And so you get what you pay for when you have a cheap tool, because they just don't do that for you. And this can cause issues. I've had my account restricted many years ago for this same reason. Cheaper tools are cheaper for a reason. They generally don't treat locations right, and the good ones do, so be careful. Now, a good tool like the one I got screenshotted over here allows you to choose a proxy that never changes. So you can say select your country, and so I can always have my login from Great Britain. It even lets me choose my own proxy, and that's for advanced users. And so this tool can give me confidence that I'm not going to have this location or proxy issue. The second thing I notice is that most LinkedIn tools have this, but there are message volume limits. So on LinkedIn, there is a daily action volume limit of around 200 actions per day, and you can do around 200 connection requests per week. So ultimately, you can't go too much volume on LinkedIn without causing some red flags. Now, most LinkedIn tools know this, so they give you a feature where they let you choose how much volume you want to do on a certain action. And most of the time, you can just leave it at default settings. Some tools are a bit more strict than other ones. They limit your volumes more because they're a little bit scared. They don't want to cause any banning events, but you can change your daily action limits on most tools. And say, for example, in HeyReach, I can just scroll them around like over here. Third is inbox managers. And this is where we begin to see some separation from all the tools. So the good tools, and I'd say about 50% of them, have inbox managers, which means you don't need to be logged into an account to respond to your DMs. And that's really useful if you have a team that are managing your LinkedIn account, that are doing some outreach from there, because you can give them access to the HeyReach account, which has the inbox, and not to your actual personal profile. Now, the only tool that can beat these inbox managers, in my opinion, is Condo. That's trycondo.com, but it's more for general usage. Condo doesn't do any outreach. It's more just for like, hey, this is like a new LinkedIn inbox tool. So FYI, I like Condo, I use it, but I would prefer, if I was only doing outreach, just to use the Outreach Unibox, because it's just much easier and it's obviously cheaper to have one tool than having two. Now, the inbox managers really shine when they have something called a Unibox or a feature which allows you to flick between different senders. So in this model over here, you'll see a little screenshot where it says senders with a down arrow. And what that ultimately means is that I can literally go through different sending accounts and look at all their DM conversations, so I can manage it all from a singular place and not have to log into any accounts. So imagine I can log into 10 accounts at once really easily through a single tool. And now account rotation is probably the newest feature that's appearing on LinkedIn. This is because there is a constraint with LinkedIn outreach volume, which I mentioned earlier. You can only send, let's say, 400 to 800 connection requests per month, 50 paid emails per month, 800 free open emails, which means even if you get a 5% book rate, which by the way is stupidly good from cold outbound, you will never be able to book more than 4 to 8 calls per month on LinkedIn because of the limitations. Now, the only way to get around this is to either create content on LinkedIn that drives inbound calls. So you have your outbound going, but you have your inbound supplementing on top, which by the way, in my opinion, is the biggest ROI of LinkedIn. And on this LinkedIn inbound plus outbound combination, we've had some crazy results. We added $1 million in revenue for a B2B paid ads agency. We added 600K in 90 days for a B2B business consultant. And this is all because we were mixing content and outbound together. Now, if you're not doing inbound, you can just scale with more accounts. So you can have more accounts set up inside your outreach tool, which effectively allows you to increase your volume. So 2 accounts gives you 2x more volume, 5 accounts, 5x more volume, 10x more volume, and so forth. This tool, HeyReach, allows for account rotations, which basically means once an account hits its daily limit, the next account kicks in so you can keep doing more volume, which by the way is how all high volume cold email works. So it's exactly the same model, but it's for LinkedIn. And this is how it looks when you go in to create a campaign. You can just click between LinkedIn senders, which is super, super useful. And finally, the thing that I want to, flag to you about LinkedIn automation tools is there are some cheeky pricing models going on. A tool may look cheap, but in the grand scheme of things, they're not giving you what you need. So for example, this tool is $9.99 a month. This one is £17. And you might think, oh, I'll use the cheaper tool to get started, but I want you to be very careful. Look at what they're providing you in their features. So this one, for example, provides a personal CRM with stats, an auto invite, ability to connect with premium account users only, and then it doesn't even let you send automated messages in bulk. So ultimately, this is not giving you the full volume that you need. And so you're naturally going to have to increase your pricing plan with them very quickly. And you'll realize this within literally about 30 minutes of using them. And so you might think you're going in for a cheaper tool, but actually it's more expensive. This $17 per user per month tool only gives you 300 invitations per month, which again, we know it's just not enough. We want to be doing 400 to 800 at our maximum capacity on LinkedIn, which other tools do let you do. And they don't have to trick you in with the cheaper pricing plans either. Now, when you're doing LinkedIn automation, there are ultimately two main things you're trying to do when it comes to outbound. The first is you want to send more LinkedIn connection requests. So your tool or whatever you're doing for automation should allow you to send bulk connection requests. And the second thing you want to be doing is in-mails. So for example, if you look at an account, let's look at Ilya's over here. He sent out 1,027 connections. He has a 35.8% acceptance rate. So he has a connection rate, and he has new connections of 368. He sent out 53 messages to these 368 as part of his campaigns. He has a reply rate. He's had in-mails, he sent out 847 in-mails, and he's had a 12% reply rate. These are awesome stats, and these are great examples of what we're doing for LinkedIn automation. We're just trying to literally get our message out to as many people as possible in a compliant and in a safe way. Now, the very first step to making this data happen and to getting these results is to add in leads into your LinkedIn automation. So there are multiple types of leads you can add and multiple sources. There are free ways and there are paid ways. The very first free way that anyone can do, and you don't have to pay for any additional tools, is the LinkedIn search bar. So for example, I can go to the search bar, type in CEO, filter for people, then maybe their second and third degree connection, so I'm not connected with them already. And I can literally look for people for free. Now, the only problem with this is the filters are kind of sucky on the LinkedIn free search, and they don't really work very well to create a qualified list. So for example, it's really hard for me to find the CEOs of SaaS companies only with this LinkedIn free search, which makes it really hard for me to build a relevant list, which is very important when it comes to LinkedIn automation. The second way that you can build your lead list is through Sales Navigator. This is probably my preferred method because it's very native to LinkedIn, and HeyReach has a very natural integration, and most LinkedIn automation tools do as well. And so instead, what you can do is head over to Sales Navigator and you could build a lead search. So you can click on lead filters over here and you can begin to look for a certain type of person. For example, we can look for VP of Sales. And I can type this in there and I can get that one over here. I can, for example, make sure the company is headquartered in North America. I can make sure that this person has been in their current company, let's say for 3 to 5 years. So it's a stable business. And I can even say if they've posted on LinkedIn, which helps me filter for the most active profiles. By the way, this is really important as a filter that you should do on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And no other data tool really lets you do this. And it's really important to do this because you probably know that most people have a LinkedIn account but don't actually use it. So we want to make sure we're only speaking to the most qualified people and the most active people on the platform. Now, what you can do once you have this Sales Navigator search is to copy the URL, and you can head over to HeyReach, click continue over here, and you can just paste the URL. There's no need to go buy an additional scraping tool because HeyReach basically does this all on your behalf. You literally just click start importing and you'll see it's working on it now, but within about 2-3 minutes, all those leads that were found from that search will now be imported into HeyReach. But if, for example, you're using a tool like Apollo or Zoom Info or even Clay to build your data lists, you can also just export the data list from those tools as a CSV and then re-upload it over here from the import CSV function, which again is very useful if you're trying to get to leads which aren't very easily found, or you need a lot of AI qualification columns to make sure that you're speaking to the right individual. Now, finally, there are 2 more sources of leads which I really like to use, but they're a bit more advanced. I'm going to show them off to you right now. The first is something called Triggerfy. Triggerfy is a social listening platform and effectively allows you to see when people are active on LinkedIn, if they've liked a comment from a different competitor, if they've joined a new role, if they've left a post. And what you can do with that is take those signals, harvest them, and then send them inside to HeyReach HeyReach. And that's only really possible because HeyReach has these webhooks basically which allow you to accept leads from a tool like Triggerfy. You can also use a tool like RB2B, which basically looks for who's gone on your website, de-anonymizes their IP and tells you their contact details. And again, you can make sure that this is set up for only the most highest converting pages on your website. For example, if someone landed on your pricing page, didn't fill out the form, didn't book in a call with you, you can find out their LinkedIn profile and then send it to HeyReach to then do an automated connection request with. And again, so you can be literally converting more people through your funnel all automatically without doing any sort of manual intervention. Now, there are two specific campaigns you are going to want to create when doing any sort of LinkedIn automation. The first is the cold connection campaign. And this is what a cold connection looks like. You have a name, you have their headline, and it's ignore or accept. And you might also have a connection request note. And that generally means you're only going to accept a connection request if that headline looks interesting, if that name looks interesting, or if that connection note looks relevant. So keep that in mind whilst we build this campaign live. So what I will do is I'll head over to campaigns. I'm going to click start new campaign. Let's give it a name called test, and you click create. So you select the lead list that you want to import. I'll use the test list, which I already did. You click continue. And again, this is where you can add in a bunch of accounts for account rotation. So for example, I'm just going to add all 4 of them. I'm going to click continue again, and then I'm going to click continue over here. And then I'm going to start to build this campaign live. So the very first thing that I do is if it's a connection, and if they're not connected, I want to send a connection request. Now, what a lot of these data tools have found out is that a blank connection request has a higher acceptance rate than a connection request with a note. So typically I like to do blank connection requests. And then after, if they've accepted, I then click add action and I click send message. And this is where I begin to send my message to get some sort of meeting going or to get some sort of conversation going. And I can use loads of variables from the scrape that HeyReach has done. So for example, I can say, hey, first name, I help B2B SaaS companies book in meetings. Are you looking for more deal flow? For example, it's not an amazing message, but that's an example of what you could write. And it's got that variable first name in there. So in case for whatever reason the scrape goes wrong, you can just copy and paste it over here. You can then click save, and that's your connection campaign done. It's really, really simple, again, because we're using HeyReach and it's all very integrated with all the other tools. Now, the second type of campaign you want to do is a cold email campaign. And this is what a cold email looks like. It's kind of like a cold email, but on LinkedIn. It's got a subject line and it's got a bunch of text beneath it. And I can also build this inside HeyReach. So instead of me saying, hey, are you a connection? I can say, if you're an open profile, I want to add an action and I want to send an email. And here I can choose a subject line. One of my best performing subject lines, by the way, is just the word hey. And then I can write a message in my email. So typically I like to do messages that say, hey, first name. I then like to add a bunch of social proof. And then I like to make an offer. So for example, I would say, hey, first name, I've helped 200 plus accounts grow on LinkedIn, add probably around 7 million in revenue, and book thousands of meetings. Again, I can make the script probably a little bit better. I noticed you've started to post on LinkedIn, probably not getting the engagement you want. And again, I've never run this offer before, but I could say, want a free audit session. I'll show you what's working, what's not, and how to fix it. No strings attached. Interested? And that could be an example of an email that I could send. Again, all I need to do is copy this over to the fallback message, remove the variable, I'll add another subject line, and I can click save. Now, I can also make my campaigns a little bit more complicated by adding action steps. So instead of just saying, hey, do you want to connect with me? I can do things like liking a post, waiting a day, viewing the profile, then waiting a day, and then sending the connection request. And the idea is, if I do it in this order, that I would warm up that lead before I send the connection request. They've seen me a couple more times in their notifications. This is all good and this works, and I have seen it increase acceptance rates, but I do want to flag that this reduces your action limit. So it can actually reduce the amount of volume which you send. So personally, I just like to send the connection request and go straight out with it. I don't like to do all the warming up techniques such as liking and profile viewing. Now, I also want to show you another type of campaign which Taylor used that picked up website visitors. I'm going to show you an advanced flow from Taylor, which got 30 positive replies from only 1,332 messages. So the campaign looked a little bit like this. So he had a like a post, he then did a view profile, and then if it was accepted, he sent the message, exactly like I was explaining previously. But what he was doing was only targeting leads that had visited his website. So what he had done is he had used R2B and set it up on certain target pages, such as the Get Demo page, the Get Grow, and How It Works pages. And these indicate that someone is kind of interested, educated, and aware of the product. He then integrated this with HeyReach, and it was really simple to do that. You just click over to integrations, see R2B, and literally just click connect now, and then copy and paste this URL into our B2B. And almost immediately, all these leads that were visiting his website were flowing into the HeyReach account. And then all we had to do was create the campaign. And then what he did was create a bunch of custom variables for his campaign message. So this was his campaign message. It said, hey, first name visited your company name. And there's a use case variable here, and there's a visitors variable here. What he was doing was using clay.com to basically create custom columns that filled out this information. And this is what it looked like. These custom columns for visitors, for example, said, and with 316 visitors hitting your website, imagine being able to identify and engage with non-profit organizations, government agencies, and first responders. That line is completely personalized to the prospect he was reaching out to. And so was the use case variable over here, which specifically called out the type of use case that was relevant to that prospect. And now, as a result, Taylor sent out 1,332 messages, got 43 replies, of which 30 were positive, which is a really, really high positive reply rate, and something you should definitely consider in your campaigns. Now, as a result of doing outreach, you get a lot of data on connection acceptance rate, your message reply rate, your email replies rate, and even your booking call rates. And these are all variables and KPIs we care about. And I'm going to help break out the KPI hierarchy for you. Your inputs are your connection sent and your in-mail sent. These are these two variables here, and you want to make sure they're as big as possible. Typically, again, 400 to 800 every single month for a LinkedIn account for the connection requests. And then for in-mails, we want about 800 open profile in-mails sent every single month. Now, that's the input you have into the system. Your leading indicators for meetings booked and for revenue tend to be the following, which is one is your reply rates and then your positive reply rates. And that's both on connection requests and on in-mails. Now, your leading indicators, which are the things that come before revenue, are your connection acceptance rate, your messages sent, your message replies, your in-mail replies, and your meetings booked. These are all things that happen prior to you making money. And then your lagging indicators are deals closed and revenue. So naturally, if we want to increase deals closed and revenue, we want to increase acceptance rates, increase reply rates, and increase email reply rates too. Now, when you're looking at your data, you're going to want to increase these variables one by one, and I'm going to show you exactly how you should be thinking about influencing this data. So if you want to increase your acceptance rates, what I mean by that is going from 15 to 30%, which is typically average and upwards, you definitely want to think about who you're reaching out to and what your profile looks like. So when you get an inbound connection request, you are evaluating whether or not you're going to get pitched, if this person is going to be useful to you, and if this person is interesting, unique, or someone that you want to know. Now, being salesy in your headline, saying we do XYZ, or we help you save money, or we make you more leads, obviously will help you get sales. But it also means we're going to have a lower acceptance rate. And so if you want to increase it, do the following, because we did this experiment ourselves. We changed the headline from we do XYZ to founder at company, and then we do XYZ. The difference is the acceptance rate jumped from 14% to 20% because it just looked less salesy. And in niches where there's a longer sales cycle and you don't want to be so direct response markety, typically doing this will actually help you make more money. The second thing I suggest you do is use better filters for your data. More often than not, a lower acceptance rate is because the person seeing your connection request doesn't find you, your message, your offer, your business relevant to them. And so an easy way to increase acceptance rate is just to ensure you're targeting more relevant leads. So in essence, you need to make sure the leads you're reaching out to actually want to hear from you. And I do this multiple ways. The simple way is to do it with Boolean filters on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So you can literally type in quotation marks and you can type in specific words you want to appear inside your leads profile that makes them a bit more qualified. And if you're using Clay, you can create more qualifier columns, and maybe the industry is just wrong. So you need to pick a whole new industry entirely because that industry doesn't want to see your message or doesn't care about your offer. Third, you want to consider testing different niches. Some niches just have very bad acceptance rates on LinkedIn. Typically, the average is 20 to 30%, 15 to 30%, but some niches are low. HVAC, I showed you last time, was 5%. E-commerce for me has always been around sub 15%, and in some cases, even sub 10%. And fourth, consider removing the connection message. I made this comment a little bit earlier, but if you haven't really got a great offer or you don't know the person, I suggest not having a connection request, and typically you will get a higher acceptance rate. Now, next, you probably want to increase your reply rates, and there are typically two ways to do this. One is if you have a direct offer message, so you are trying to be salesy, you are trying to pitch, and you're finding that you're just not getting a response, it's likely your offer isn't that good. And instead, you need to find a way to make it more irresistible. So we're running this direct offer template for a client right now, and it's doing incredibly well. We're booking around 5 qualified calls every single month from around 800 outreaches, which is a 6% meeting book rate from cold. And all it says is something along the lines of, hey, we worked with a big brand, we got them a result, would you like a free service to give it a go? Now, the bigger the brand name, the bigger the result, and obviously the bigger and the higher perceived value of that service, the higher the response rate will be. So we're just making ourselves a bit more irresistible. The second technique is, if you don't want to be salesy, you don't want a direct pitch, make it even less salesy, because you can write a message that says, hey, I'm doing some research. What are you struggling with most when it comes to things? You're basically making your message look like market research and not imply a sale is about to happen, which helps people respond more. The second thing you can do is a this versus that question. So you can say, hey, I saw you're doing thing. Is the goal to get goal 1 or goal 2? By giving them options to what to answer, you actually help them respond. And this third one is my favorite. Just say, hey, name, and then give them a compliment with no ask whatsoever. It's such a big pattern interrupt on LinkedIn. It typically gets a very high response rate. And once you've fiddled around with your leading indicators, such as your messages sent, your positive reply rates, you want to increase your meeting book rates. And one of the best ways to do this is offer a reason for the call, because between the DMs and the call, there is just a huge gap. And it's friction that represents, do I want to spend time with this person? Do I need these services? Do I care? And to bridge this gap, you just need to offer value. And for example, this value could be, hey, let's jump on a call. I'll show you some things and I'll give you a free audit, or and I'll give you a roadmap, or and I will show you some things that worked for someone else. This is acting as a bridge to go from the DMs to the call, and helps the prospect overcome the gap or the risk of wasting 30 minutes of their time, because you are offering something of value in return. And finally, you may just find that you need to follow up with leads. A lot of my meetings are booked in the follow-up. So once you have a whiff of a meeting, you've got to stay on the ball to book it in. I firstly like to note the conversation down as not booked yet in HeyReach. So what I would do is I would go to the uni box and I would literally click on a conversation, and then I can literally filter for all those conversations really easily. So I can tag my conversation as not booked, and then I can literally filter throughout my whole inbox for the tags that say not booked and see all those conversations, and I know to follow up with those leads very easily, very quickly. Now, messages like, managed to find a time yet, got some slot next week, so if that works better, is this still a priority, or again, offer a bit of value, tend to work really well. Now, I tend to, again, space my follow-ups a day apart for the first couple of follow-ups, and if I'm not getting a response, I will just push it to a week and then maybe a month. And the reason why is LinkedIn has infinite message history in the inbox. I don't want to overly spam my leads. They will eventually come into buying window, they will know who I am, and they will come and reach out to me when the time is right. Now, throughout this video, I was showing you HeyReach, which is my favorite automation tool for so many reasons, such as the ones I mentioned. One, it's got this dashboard where I can see all my leading and my lagging indicators. I know what my analytics are, and I can pull the right variables. Two, I can access leads from various sources. I can do it from the search bar, which is free, from Sales Navigator leads, from all the integrations, which is RB2B, such as Triggerfy, and I can even do it from LinkedIn events and post reactors, and most importantly from import CSV if I'm using Apollo, ZoomInfo, or Clay. What I also love is the proxy feature, which is right here. When you put in your LinkedIn email and your password, you can choose which country you're logging in from, which makes sure your account looks safe. And if you have your own proxy, you can literally click add your own proxy and add it there as well. They also have account rotation, which I showed you on the campaign, which means I can send more in-mail volume, I can send more connection requests, and ultimately, when I automate through HeyReach, I actually am able to save a lot more time had I used another tool. It's a no-brainer to use HeyReach. It gets cheaper the more accounts you add, and it's really simple to get started, as I showed you, because you can get a campaign running in literally 5 to 10 minutes. Now, in this video, we just only covered the automation side of things. And in reality, automation is only one part of a LinkedIn lead generation strategy to help you get leads, grow your business, and make sales. So click here to watch the next video, which covers the best LinkedIn lead generation strategy, which you need to be using this year to generate hundreds of leads, get your profile set up, and do follow-ups the right way. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.